how intelligent are you? With the caveat, emotionally. No, life isn't about sleeping, walking, and eating, but also the need to pay attention to that feeling derived from our circumstance. In this regard, we're talking about emotional intelligence, the meaning and the importance. Even in the course of relating with each other, in the course of dealing with the things that come our way, sometimes the emotional knowledge we have helps us a great deal in dealing with things and dealing with people. So today we're looking at you and living emotional intelligence. And to help us is Mr. Kuro Ngoboh, who's an emotional intelligence coach and expert. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, sir.
So, let's begin by defining emotional intelligence.
Okay.
What is it?
I'll use Daniel Goleman's definition, which is simple and straightforward. First, it is your ability to recognize, understand, manage your own emotions, and then recognize, understand, and influence the emotions of others. That's a simple way of putting it.
Manage yours, influence the others.
But first recognize it and then understand it.
And why is this so important?
The world we are in today has gone belly up. I'm sure you know that. So many things have changed in the way the world works, the kind of news we hear, the things people do, and most times they are driven by emotional issues. In fact, research has shown that up to 65% of the success people eventually get through in life is based on emotional issues. It's something on the inside that decides or guides us to act in a particular way. And these successes are with relationships, with career, with business, with everything in life. So it's very important now. It's more important for a second reason. Artificial intelligence is the buzzword now, which is simply the simulation of human intelligence using machines or robots. It is going to take jobs, let's be frank. It's going to change the way the world works. It's already doing that now. But in the future, there will still be a role for people who handle human-type jobs because those robots still cannot be taught to feel. They still cannot be taught to fear, to love, to do all those things. And from wars to being president to suicide to domestic violence to everything we deal with today, emotions have a role to play.
But then, talking about emotions here, the concern is many of the troubles we have are caused by emotion.
True.
So why do we even need to be intelligent about, why don't we just think about how to kill the emotions and continue? Because wars are caused by anger emotions. I mean, marriages are broken or relationships are broken by emotions going awry.
Yeah.
Why bother?
Basic biology teaches us that every human being has 5 senses. And we experience our world through those 5 senses. So there's sight, taste, touch, hearing, all of that. Now, every time there's an external stimulus, our senses capture it and send a message to our brain. And that triggers how we react to it. But the route to the brain is really, I like to be animated about this a bit. The route to the brain is that it first goes to your survival brain. I call that stage 1, like your lower brain. And if a message gets there from an external stimulus, your brain first asks, is this a do or die affair? Is this a fight or flight reaction you require? If that is the case, you will act without thinking. So as you are here, if we poke your leg with a pin, you will naturally flinch without thinking. You will jerk without thinking.
Yeah.
That is your body reacting at the survival brain stage. Now, if the message gets there and it realizes that it's not a fight or flight thing, the same message will move to your emotional brain and trigger an emotion. One small organ called an amygdala is in your brain. Everything sits there from love to hate to all the emotions. Then triggers an emotion. Some people react while it is there. Some people can allow that same message get to their thinking brain, which is the top of the brain, before they act. Now, people who are generally unintelligent emotionally would react more when the emotion is triggered. People who are emotionally intelligent have built capacity to let that message get to their thinking brain before they react. So my boss slaps me at work, case in point. I could retaliate if the message is in my emotional brain. If I think school fees, house rent, and all those things, I may change. I may change my reaction.
Yeah, of course.
Yes. Okay. So it's intrinsic. Unfortunately, we can't kill it. We can't cut the amygdala out. People whose amygdalas have stopped to function, because sometimes some parts of the brain stop to function. people who don't have an amygdala or who, for any reason, biologically, medically, they can't trigger emotions in them, have turned out to be completely off in society. Because then there's no empathy, they don't relate well with people. They usually turn out to be the kind of people we don't want in society, essentially.
So should we wait for whatever it is to get to our thinking brain before we react?
That is
It's
the
just
idea.
that we can't control that, can we?
We can. And
We
that's
can.
the idea behind emotional intelligence. We can.
Okay. So we wait and think before we react.
Okay. Wait doesn't essentially mean a time span. That because sometimes you don't have time to wait and think. You understand? But over time, people can use thinking to override emotions. So, and the easiest way to do this is to paint examples or to create examples or case studies. So somebody does something to me, and off the cuff, I get upset. Lagos. You get on a bus in Lagos, and I like bus and Lagos. People forget, if they think, you would realize that people that do those kind of jobs, bus conductors and drivers in Lagos, they don't have any interest in repeat business. Let me treat you nicely so you enter my bus again. It's not their business. You can't tell them I'm paying you my money, so treat me nice. That's for hotels and airlines. It's not for bus conductors. So when you have an encounter with a bus conductor, it triggers anger in you. You can react based on that. And if you do, guess what will happen? They will stop the bus and ask you to get off and refund your money. And when you don't, the other people in the bus will join hands to say, "Oh God, I have to get to work. Can you please get off
out."
the bus so we can go to where we're going?" If you can think through it a little, and it's not a time span thing, it's something you train yourself to do over time. If you can think through it a little and realize that this encounter will bring me no value, just give him what he wants and go your way. And that happens a lot of times in relationships. So imagine people who get so angry, and there's something called an amygdala hijack, where your amygdala triggers a very strong emotion. It doesn't allow the message go to your thinking brain. So people don't think. People get so angry, they can't work. I'm sure you've...
Road rage.
Road rage was my biggest issue. So you see, you're in a car by yourself, AC wound up, you're listening to music, somebody drives recklessly next to you. You spend the next few seconds just ranting. Are you not mad? What's the definition of mad as we used to know it? You're talking to yourself, you're dressed in rags. Do you understand? The more I thought about it, the more it became clear that, see, you have to consciously
Detach yourself.
and think. And most times, if we get ourselves to think, it's not a thing that takes time. For some people, it's milliseconds. For many people, it's milliseconds. But if we say, okay, let's just pause and look at what's going on here, you may come up with a different perspective, and you most likely would react differently.
How important is emotional intelligence to living?
Very important. One, the decisions you make in career, in business, in relationships are largely tied to emotions. Even marriage, I like you first. I feel good about you first. Then we back it up with some logic.
Even business decisions?
Even business decisions, yes.
I mean, making millions is also tied to emotions.
Think about it. The message, the external stimulus first takes a message to your emotional brain before your smart or your thinking brain, which means it will pass through some emotion and be colored by it a bit before you take a business decision. So it's very important. It's also important with health. If somebody allows fear to be a repeated, triggered emotion in you, what will happen is you force a lot of things to go wrong with your body. Your heart rate will beat faster. What does blood pressure mean? In simple English, blood pressure essentially is that there's more pressure that your heart is pushing blood out or receiving blood, or something to do with blood, and the pressure is moving back and forth. Now, what happens when you're afraid? Your heart beats faster. If that becomes a regular thing, then the rhythm of your heartbeat will change. And then the tendency for blood pressure can go on and on. So there are health issues, there are business issues, there are even war issues. Why do people go to war? I want what you have. You won't give me. I have some might. I exert the might to get what I want. And then we kill one another.
Said so simply. But, I mean, it's not a joke.
No, it's not.
But we don't seem to place any that much importance on emotional
yes.
intelligence.
Yes.
Yes.
Why?
People don't... First, we have to recognize that it's an issue now.
Okay, first, do we even recognize emotion? I mean, is it,
I don't.
this is an emotional person. Please shift.
Yes, that's most. What happens most times is we just set them aside and attempt to move on. But the truth is, all of us need to recognize it, but we don't. So we are speaking about it more these days. In fact, there was a conversation recently about, is it possible to make it a part of the curriculum at tertiary institutions the first year you come in, all those GS, GNS kind of courses. It's very important because think about the world we are in now. I mentioned mad earlier, and it sounded like a joke. But when I was a kid, a mad person speaks to himself and dresses in rags. That happens now to sane people.
Dressed in suits.
People buy jeans and tear it up. Hello? So the world already is not seeming like we used to know it. The world, think about the times when people get a message on WhatsApp in a group and get upset by it. And that simple emotion that was triggered can make the person produce nothing the whole day. So you can see how it's very important. That's the point. Should we make it more important and speak about it more? Yes, we should. Should we? But the world makes it difficult. People don't read read as much as they used to, so people won't read about it. People would ascribe certain things to spirituality. Oh, it's village people, those kind of things. Rather than, can we deal with the issue? This is what this person needs to deal with. So we try to make it more important and show it more to the world, but
does it affect, do you think it has any impact? I mean, does it affect performance at work?
Yes, it does.
Would it boost performance at work?
Yes, it does.
At the same way that it could affect it adversely?
Yes, it can. So luckily I've had experience 15 years thereabouts in banking, and I did a couple of different banks. And I think banks have a structure that we can use to model the workplace well enough. So at lower levels in any workplace, your skills are more important. Getting the job done is very important. When you rise to a certain level, getting the job done alone is not enough. When you begin to manage people, they appraise you more on how you manage people, how you get people to get the job done, how you make them do what they need to do, whether they want to do it or not, and how you represent the organization. So we won't send you to be MD of a subsidiary in another country if we think you can handle your emotions. Before you go there and kill everybody. Instead of doing the job, before you paint us in the wrong light. I can go on and on. So it is very, very important. And toxic people in workplaces usually get into trouble. If you're toxic, you can't handle your emotions. There was a workplace where there was a girl who always cried at the slightest flinch. When things went quiet at work, the boys would just gather and just do something to trigger her, cry. And that was for them excitement. And she would cry. She would respond
right on cue.
Right on cue.
So how do we deal with it for that kind of situation, for instance? How do you help that kind of individual who is almost always, her tears are just around
waiting, the tear bags are full all the time. Okay, so let me use that person as an example. First, we need to understand why it is the person flinches at almost anything. It could be experiences, and we need to remember that experiences count. So case in point, not a good example, but I'll use it still. A young girl gets raped when she was much younger, 11, 10, thereabouts. And when she was about to be raped, the rapist winked at her. When she grows up, and a man is trying to ask her out, and he winks at her saying, I like you.
Oh, dear.
It's not going to trigger the same thing.
Oh, dear.
You understand? It's going to trigger a different thing, even though the action is the same. So we need to find out what is making her flinch at stuff that way. She could be afraid of something from the past. It could be something. So we need to trace that first and try and get her mind to see it in a different light. It has happened.
Whose duty is it to do that at the workplace?
I won't say therapists and psychologists, because when you mention those names, people think you've gone loco in Nigeria. So let me not go there yet, though they are the best people for it.
So you'd advise her to go and see
a therapist, at least a therapist.
A shrink.
I didn't want to put it that way. But then there will also be people around her at work who should identify that.
Who are close to her.
Yes, and should try to deal with it. Otherwise, everybody would eventually suffer for it.
Would look a bit about this emotional intelligence and children, raising children. When we'll come back from this break. Please stay with us. Thank you for staying with us. We're still talking emotional intelligence, and many of us hardly pay attention to that. Festus says emotional intelligence affects our quality of life. Sadly, many people have made bad decisions and acted foolishly because of lack of emotional intelligence, which is, first of all, recognizing and then managing yours and then influencing the next person. Okay, Kuro. In parenting, how effective or what's the role of emotional intelligence?
Kids mirror what we do more than do what we say they should do. So when a parent is not emotionally intelligent, that usually will play out on the kids, first part. So how do parents react to things? How do parents guide them? They see all those things. So that's the first part that he plays. Kids also in their formative years have brains like sponges. So because they are going to model people around them, teachers, parents, the elder ones and all of that, and they are beginning to form the kind of character they have. If emotional intelligence is missed at that level, you'd have a very unintelligent child as they grow. And to them, the way to react to certain things will be what they've seen. So if, for instance, physical violence is the way to correct bad behavior, like slap the child backhand, and the things some of us got too used to over time. If the child grows into that, grows into believing that that is the way to correct bad behavior, the child may even get to the point where he knows he cannot exert that kind of physical reaction to somebody doing something badly. Like you can't slap everybody at work. You can't take a whip out of your car and flog every kekema or kada rider on the road and all that. But they would then find ways to still inflict some kind of pain. Could be physically, could be by the words they say, could be some reaction, and relationships will just keep falling apart. And for the best way to look at this thing is this: no human being can successfully make it in life without others. No matter how great or how fantastic you are, you will still need people. So
no man is an island.
No man is an island. So when relationships fail, it will come back to you. IQ is very important. You know, IQ is knowledge, is all of those things. But think about the greatest case in point. Think about the most successful people we will point to in the world today. And please tell me if you think IQ was more important in their becoming successful as much as EQ. EQ in this case meaning managing people, managing their emotions, taking the right decisions. What importance did both of them play in them becoming successful? You find that EQ played a bigger role there.
Okay, so before we let you go, who is an emotionally intelligent person?
An emotionally intelligent person is someone who first can identify his own emotions. So people who come to you and say, I don't know how I feel. I say, calm down. Go and find out how you feel. Then come back to tell me. I don't have a crystal ball or shekere to beat and tell you how you feel. That's your job, to tell me how you feel, to communicate your emotions to me. So first, you understand your own emotions. And understand to the point where you know that anger, for instance, and frustration are two different emotions. They are not the same. Frustration is I'm doing something over and over again, I'm not getting the results. And then I get tired of doing it. Anger is something that I don't agree with. It's happening to me now and can be triggered immediately. So I could react to you somehow. You think it's anger because you told me something now. You don't realize it's frustration for the past 4 years of our relationship that you refuse to give me something I want. I don't know if you understand where I'm coming from. Yeah. So first...
Fortunately, I'm giving it
Fortunately. So first, the person who recognizes his emotions, you have to recognize it first. And you need a wide vocabulary to do that. If you need to go to a dictionary to understand the meaning of words. I know most people don't understand the meaning of words. They just use them. Idiots. Stupid. I wish we could do English class to teach people what those words mean so they can use it appropriately. So first, recognize your own emotions. Then find a way to manage it. There's always a way. People use music. People get away from the situation. People, there are different ways. Find your own way to manage it so you don't freak out. And then when you have those two done, recognize your own, understand and manage them, then begin to relate to people knowing that. Use empathy, relate to people knowing that. Lagos, everybody's problem now is moving around. I expect an emotionally intelligent boss, for instance, to begin to think about how productive his staff are getting to work at 10 in the morning and getting a query for coming to work at 10 when we all know why they're late, and then getting back home at 11 the next day. People will just start dropping like bags in offices if emotionally intelligent bosses don't find ways to solve the problem. So can they telecommute? Can they work from home? Can we do shifts? Can you come in later than you were supposed to? Can we find some way of making it work without exerting pressure on you? That's the kind of thing emotional intelligence will bring to play. And that's how I define an emotionally intelligent person.
Kuro.
Interesting.
In closing, finally,
Okay.
one word for all of us who are emotional.
We all are, somewhat.
That's why I said all of us.
I think the word or the comment would be, first find out what triggers certain emotions in you. And everybody can track it if you just pay attention. So let's just find that out first. What triggers a particular emotion in you? So when somebody does something, it triggers anger. It triggers, if you change the cue, it's a habit loop. If you change the cue, you can change what happens afterwards. So the first thing is find out what triggers certain emotions in you. And then secondly, remember something. Most people who are in prison today or who have passed on or who are unsuccessful in life have had emotional issues to deal with and have dealt with them wrongly. Oh, I just pushed him a bit. Then there's one edge of a table waiting for his head to hit, and then I end up in jail and he's dead. I can go on and on. I'm not doing anymore. I don't want to do this job anymore, and I walk away. And for the next 3 years, I don't have anything to eat. Those decisions are based on emotional cues. Find a way to think just before you act, and the world will be a better place.
Thank you so much. Kuro Ngoboh is an emotional intelligence coach and expert. Thank you for sharing today with us.
Thank you.